Welcome to the Sleepless Creator YouTube channel, and you are watching the world of boring history for sleep stories. You awaken in silence. The first filtered rays of sun breach the latticework windows, casting delicate shadows on walls embroidered with rich patterns. You are not in a sultan's chamber, but deep within the harem. A place not of scandal and excess, but of structure, hierarchy, and routines as rigid as the empire outside its walls. The Ottoman Harem in Topkapi Palace is a far cry from the swirling myths it inspired in Europe. Here, life is regulated. Wake-up call comes not from birdsong, but from the matron eunuch's firm knock on the wooden doors. The women rise, stretch, and begin their day not in luxury, but in quiet preparation. The harem was a world within a world, not simply a place of concubines and consorts, but a training ground, a finishing school, and an administrative hub of the imperial family. The women here were not all lovers. They were laundresses, calligraphers, seamstresses, and teachers. Some would never even meet the Sultan. You are perhaps a Khalfa, an attendant of mid-level rank, not a novice, not yet a woman of influence. You answer to the Usta, the mistress of discipline in your dormitory, and dream perhaps of someday serving the Valide Sultan, the Sultan's mother, who commands more respect in these walls than most. Men in the court. At the morning call, you and your companions fold up your sleeping mattresses. No soft feather beds, only simple mats laid across tiled floors. The floor is cool and scrubbed clean with lemon water. The scent lingers faintly in the air. You bathe modestly, drawing water from the hammam. Bathing is a ritual, cleansing not just the body, but aligning the mind to a rhythm of discipline. Linen towels, olive soap, a touch of rose water behind the ears for dignity. Then breakfast, plain flat bread with dates, maybe cheese if it's a good day. Meals are communal but subdued. There is no idle chatter in this hour. You eat facing inward, toward the domed center of the room beneath the watchful eye of the elders. After breakfast, the real day begins. Instruction is first. Every woman in the harem, regardless of origin, is educated. You practice Arabic calligraphy on reed paper with iron gall ink. Your tutor, once a concubine herself, now commands the room with her soft voice and pointed cane. You learn not just language, but poetry, etiquette, and the Quran. There is a daily recitation, sometimes as short as a few verses, always taken seriously. By midday, it is time for labor. You are assigned to the embroidery hall this month. The Sultan's robes require stitching, threads of silver and gold, delicate patterns that must be precise to avoid the wrath of the master tailor. You sew for hours with bowed head and aching back, chatting quietly with the girl beside you about rumors. Was a new concubine brought in last night? Did she really come from Georgia? Did the Valide Sultan approve? There is a rhythm to the day. Lunch is taken in silence once more. Stew with chickpeas, again bread, sometimes olives, and then rest, but not idleness. Some women learn to play the oud or the ney flute. Music is an accomplishment expected of those who might rise. Others tend the palace's medicinal herb garden or prepare incense in the perfumery. You are sent this afternoon to inventory linens. Counting, folding, recording. It is work that must be perfect. Errors are punished not cruelly, but thoroughly. You are here to learn precision. You pass the corridors carefully. Eunuchs, the only men allowed within the harem walls, move through their own hierarchy. Chief among them is the Kislar Aga, the black eunuch who reports directly to the Sultan and the Valide Sultan. He controls access to the women, an administrative powerhouse in his own right. You bow your head as he passes. The harem is a machine. Each cog knows its place. Every step you take, every room you clean, every phrase you recite, all part of an elaborate system that blends power and obedience, ambition and stillness. As the afternoon wanes, you prepare for evening prayers. The tiled walls glow under lamplight, shadows dancing across archways. You kneel and recite, not just in worship, but in hope. Some women pray for escape, others pray to catch the eye of power. You simply pray to get through another day without being noticed too much or too little. Evening brings a lighter meal. Rice with vegetables, sweetened figs. The women retreat to their dormitories. Before sleep, you write, practicing your script, committing a Rumi verse to memory, reflecting in silence. The oil lamp flickers. You rub your fingers sore from thread work. You hear whispers across the hall of a new arrival from Albania, barely 12. Another girl just started lessons in Persian. Someone says the Valide Sultan will visit tomorrow, or was it next week? You lie down, the hard mat under your spine. You stare up at the domed ceiling where painted vines spiral into infinity. Sleep does not come quickly, but it comes eventually. Like everything here, by routine, not by pleasure. You wonder how many years will pass before you leave this place. Will you ever leave? And what kind of woman will you be if you do? The next morning begins just like the last, as every morning here does. Soft lamplight yielding to the sun's glow, the rustling of linen as girls rise from their floor mats, and the quiet, purposeful steps of women already years into their routines. You wake not with anticipation, but with quiet resolve. But today is different. Word travels faster than incense smoke in these marble corridors. The Valide Sultan is due to walk the lower wing this morning. Her presence here is more than symbolic. It's strategic. Her steps are both feared and revered. Her favor a ladder, her displeasure a wall. In the hierarchy of the Ottoman Harem, the Valide Sultan sits nearly at the top of the imperial order. As the Sultan's mother, her influence over court appointments, treasury allocations, and most crucially, the harem itself, makes her the pivot around which many lives turn. You, a Khalfa, may not be in her direct path today, but her gaze can land anywhere. And today you must be ready. You tie your sash more tightly. Your hair is oiled and braided. Your outer robes freshly pressed. You pass inspection by your usta, a silent nod that says adequate, before hurrying to the embroidery hall. The air in the hall is tense. The younger novices are more prone to nerves, pricking fingers, threading needles incorrectly. A sharp-tongued master seamstress corrects them with speed. You, having been here several years now, can stitch while half listening to the rumors. She's been favoring the girl from Trebizond, whispers one woman. She's testing the Circassian again, another replies. Maybe she's looking for someone to send to the outer palace. You focus on your work. A robe trim for one of the Sultan's ceremonial jackets, commissioned weeks ago but only now entering final assembly. Gold thread unspools like liquid. The work is detailed, repetitive, strangely meditative. Midway through the morning, the hall stills. The Valide Sultan has entered. She walks not quickly nor slowly, but with the practiced pace of someone who has ruled from behind curtains for decades. She does not need to speak often. Her head eunuch speaks for her, repeating her words with formality. She inspects the workstations, pauses at a loom, lifts a swatch of embroidered cloth between two fingers. Her brow is unreadable, She does not stop at your station, but her eyes pass across it. You exhale only after she leaves the room. A few girls begin whispering immediately and are chastised. After her visit, life resumes its rhythm, but altered. The Valide's presence is like the moon affecting the tides. You feel it in how the tutors become stricter, how the head cook is suddenly more exacting with her spices, how even the eunuchs step more carefully. That afternoon, your assignment shifts. You're sent to the harem treasury room, a rare task. The beau room is not filled with gold, but with ledgers, robes, and gifts. Carefully catalogued lists of dowries, endowments, diplomatic trinkets, and textiles from across the empire. A row of women sit cross-legged, copying inventory notes. This is the administrative brain of the harem. Here you meet Fatma Kalfa, an older woman known for her precise calligraphy and perfect memory. She has been in the harem since before your birth. She is neither warm nor cold, but completely focused. You are tasked with helping her sort garments for an upcoming festival, a kind of internal ceremony that the Sultan's favored consorts and their attendants will attend. You lift folded kaftans, each more ornate than the next, and assist with matching headpieces. Some date back decades, preserved with dried herbs in muslin wraps. As you fold one robe, Fatma Kalfa speaks quietly. "Do you know why we match colors this way?" she asks. You hesitate. "To honor tradition?" She shakes her head. "To remember who wore what to which festival. Every choice here is political. If we repeat a pattern, someone will feel dishonored. If we misplace a sash, someone will claim slight." You nod, listening carefully. This is not sewing. This is memory work. Politics in cotton and thread. Later, you help prepare scented sachets, blends of rose petals, cloves, cinnamon bark, each one a gift, each one catalogued. That evening, as dusk settles, you sit in the central courtyard, a place where only women and eunuchs may go. It is tiled, shaded, with a small fountain bubbling in the center. You watch two young girls practice verses nearby, and an older woman mend a slipper quietly by lamplight. You speak with Zeynep, your closest friend here. She once came from Bosnia, or so you've heard. You rarely speak of the outside world. She tells you that the girl from Trebizond cried today, that she was spoken to directly by the Valid Sultan, but no one knows why, that she may be sent to the old palace, where aging consorts and retired staff are housed. It's not punishment, exactly, but it's the end of any hope for influence. You wonder what your own path will be. You are not the most beautiful nor the most skilled, but you are observant. You learn patterns, you watch what others do and don't do. You stitch cleanly, you speak only when needed, and yet you are aware that your time here is awaiting. Game night falls. A eunuch walks the halls announcing the time for lights out. You lie in your bedroll once again, exhausted, but your mind is not yet still. You think of Fatma Kalfa and her ledgers, of the silk robe you helped fold from Syria, of the girl who may never return from her private meeting, of the Valide Sultan, who ruled the palace with almost no words. What makes a woman powerful in this place? Is it beauty, obedience, memory, or silence? It has been nearly a year since the day the Valide Sultan's gaze swept past your station. Seasons have shifted in the gardens. The apricot trees blossomed and faded. Rain fell on the marble courtyards and dried under slow-burning sun. In the harem, though, the rhythm never faltered. Each day has passed like the one before it. Ritual, labor, instruction, prayer, and yet, quietly, your position has changed, not dramatically, not with fanfare, but with consistency. You now oversee a group of novices, Girls newly arrived from the border provinces, still hesitant in their speech, still awkward in their movements. You show them how to fold linens correctly, how to hold their brushes at the proper angle during script practice, how to rise gracefully when a superior enters the room. You did not ask for this role, but you did not refuse it either. You've learned the currents of this place, where to be, when to be still, which corridors carry sound more than others. When a eunuch is lying and when a Khalfa is testing you, there is power in boredom, you realize. In repetition and invisibility. In doing things so well no one notices anymore. One evening you're called to assist in the silk room, a vaulted chamber rarely visited by those outside the highest ranks. Here, the Sultan's ceremonial garments are stored, cared for with obsessive precision, not just stitched and pressed but preserved. Each one holds memory of a battle survived, of a festival celebrated, of a marriage arranged. The room smells of time itself. Dried herbs, sandalwood, old cedar drawers. You're asked to assist with a task, preparing garments for an annual audience with foreign envoys. The Sultan will not meet them in person, but his consorts, guards, and ceremonial figures must be dressed as if he might. Everything matters. Fold lines, stitching, the brightness of a silk sash. You work in silence with 3 others. None speak. Above a whisper. At one point you unfold a robe so delicate, so faded by age that it seems to sigh in your hands. A note tucked inside reads, "Worn by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. Feast of the Crescent, 1554. The writing is old, slanted. The paper, brittle. It occurs to you that centuries from now, someone may unfold the garments you touch today. They may wonder who you were, what you thought, if you mattered. The next day you are summoned, formally. You are to accompany a Hazindar, senior chamberlain, to the Valid Sultan's private library. The cause is not stated. This is unusual. It could be anything. The library is unlike the rest of the harem. Quiet not by order, but by reverence. Shelves climb the walls, filled with texts in Arabic, Persian, Ottoman Turkish, Greek. Many of the women here cannot read them. You can read most. You have taught yourself in stolen moments, copying letters by candlelight, whispering phrases under your breath during chores. The Valid Sultan is not present when you enter, but her secretary is. You are given a stack of fragile texts and a list. Your task: to compare the ledger with the books and confirm which ones have been misplaced, misfiled, or damaged. It is mind-numbing work, precisely the kind you've come to understand is never just about the books. It is a test of memory, of attention, of composure. By sunset, you've catalogued 12 errors, corrected the placements of 8 volumes, and found 2 missing entirely. You write a report. Careful, precise. You hand it to the secretary without embellishment. 2 days later, you are summoned again, this time to the inner harem gardens, a place typically reserved for favored consorts, senior Khalfas, and the occasional Valide Sultan herself. You do not speak. You wait, seated quietly by a fountain, listening to the slow drip of water echo against the tiles. Eventually she appears. The Valide Sultan walks with one attendant. She does not look directly at you for several minutes. When she does, it is not with warmth nor disdain, just calculation. "You have a steady mind," she says at last. Her voice is low, patient. You observe. You don't waste your tongue. You bow your head. You do not speak. You will help Fatma Khalfa manage the ledger room. A pause. You will not speak of this. She leaves. And just like that, your role shifts again, quietly, Significantly, Fatma Khalfa welcomes you without ceremony. She begins to train you in the deeper records, those not kept in the harem's public ledgers. These are archives of gifts, diplomatic correspondences, inheritances, and the names of women who once held power, and those who disappeared quietly into the old palace or worse. One evening, Fatma Khalfa unrolls a scroll of silk and shows you a list, not of robes or dates, but of surnames, names of daughters born within the harem, names that were hidden to protect lineage. Next to them, small symbols, a leaf, a drop of water, a slash of ink. You look up at her. She says only, "The empire keeps its own secrets. The harem is not a cage, nor is it a garden. It is an archive, and you now are one of its keepers. Years from now, when you walk these same halls slower, when your back has bent slightly from years of copying and counting, a new girl will look at you and wonder what kind of power you hold. She will not see you in silk. She will not see you command a room, but she will notice that people pause when you speak, and that even the eunuchs wait for your nod before moving a document. You will have risen, not through beauty or seduction, but through something else entirely. Stillness, precision, memory, patience. The harem does not reward ambition openly. It rewards endurance. You do not know what your life outside these walls might have been. You no longer wonder. You are not a consort, not a wife, not a forgotten chambermaid. You are the one who remembers everything. Reflection. The Ottoman Harem, often misunderstood in Western imagination, was not simply a space of sensual luxury. It was an institution, one of education, politics, and power. Women here learned to read, write, manage accounts, and influence the imperial family. Through structure, silence, and adaptation, many rose to incredible influence. Their stories remain stitched into the fabric of history, quiet and profound. It is the year of the Peacock Throne, 1635, in the heart of the Mughal Empire. The air in Agra is thick with dust, faint traces of jasmine, and the persistent chatter of court officials arguing over budget allocations for elephants. You are not one of them. You are a munshi, a scribe, not a poet, not a nobleman, not a warrior in silk and gold. You are a clerk who copies letters, calculates grain levies, and files memoranda with meticulous ink lines and stiff shoulders. Your day begins with a quiet cough and a stretch that your joints resent. Another morning in the imperial Diwani Khas, the hall of private audience. Though the work itself is never quite so grand, you rise before dawn. The call to prayer floats across Agra's rooftops, echoing off minarets. You dress plainly, cream-colored kurta, cotton turban, sandals worn, smooth at the heel. No scent of oud or perfume for you. That's for the courtiers who write history and sword and speech. You write it in paper margins. Before breakfast, you prepare your tools, a set of 3 reed pens, their tips trimmed just so. A round ink pot sealed the night before. Rolls of coarse beige paper. Your ledger, binding frayed but pages intact, and your seal, made of ivory, bearing your initials in Persian script. Today your assignment is to transcribe a farman, a royal decree, issued from Emperor Shah Jahan himself. The original is scrawled hastily in elegant but difficult shorthand. Your job, render it clear, legible, and presentable for provincial governors in Punjab, Bihar, and Gujarat. They will never see your face, but they will obey the words you make permanent. The scribes' quarters lie beneath the main administrative offices of the Red Fort, not the marble balconies and mirrored halls where visiting envoys feast, but the stone corridors near the storage vaults, warm in winter, stifling in summer. There are 23 of you, all men, all quiet, all slightly stooped. You sit cross-legged at your desk, a squat wooden frame barely elevated above the floor. The other munchies have arrived. No greetings, just coughs, clearing of throats, and the occasional sigh. Outside, the pigeons flutter across the courtyard. A eunuch passes holding a box of documents wrapped in velvet. You begin your first transcription of the day. Your pen scratches softly. Let it be known, in the 3rd year of the Emperor's celestial glory, the road from Fatehpur to Lahore shall be widened, and lantern towers erected every mile. You pause, double-check the verb tense, add a diacritical mark, continue. You work for 4 straight hours without pause. This is the rhythm you've mastered. Glance at the original, memorize a phrase, replicate it line by line. Stop only to sharpen your reed pen with a bone knife. At mid-morning, a junior clerk brings stale sweetmeats and hot tea. You sip slowly. You're not paid in gold or jewels. You're paid in reliability, accuracy, the fact that your mistakes do not show up in audits. The chief vakil, a portly man who smells of clove oil, appears suddenly to collect yesterday's submissions. He does not look you in the eye. He never has, but he signs your margin anyway. A looped swirl that means checked. The paper disappears into his satchel, headed to the emperor's chamber, or a provincial courier's cart. You watch it go with mild detachment. You'll never see it again. Your job is the sentence, not the outcome. You return to your writing. All tax assessments on indigo dye are to be reviewed quarterly, with revenue reports submitted no later than at noon. A distant bell rings. Time for the second prayer. A few scribes leave their posts. Others keep working. There are deadlines to meet. You roll your shoulders. One of your knees aches, perhaps from the rain last week, or from age. You're 37, which in bureaucratic terms is nearly ancient. You pull out another document, this one much older, yellowed at the edges, bearing the stamp of Emperor Jahangir, long dead. A petition from a village in Bengal requesting funds to repair an irrigation canal destroyed in a monsoon. Someone has annotated it. Denied. Funds reassigned to cavalry horse imports. You don't react. You simply copy the notation and prepare the summary. The empire is vast. You've never left Agra, but you know its shape better than most generals. You've written about the roads of Gujarat, the mines of Bihar, the forests of the Deccan, the orchards of Kashmir. You've never tasted Kashmiri apples, but you've accounted for their trade routes. You pause to stretch. A junior clerk, barely 14, rushes in with new orders. Reports from Burhanpur need to be redrafted in Imperial Persian, not Hindavi. You nod. You switch languages. This is your work. Translation, transformation, tedium. By late afternoon, your pen has worn down. You pause to sand your most recent page, lightly brushing grit over the wet ink to dry it faster. Then you file it in the done pile. Outside, the sky turns saffron. You glance around. The other scribes are silent, their heads bowed over paper. A candle flickers. A moth beats against the window pane. You hear music, soft flute and drum, from the palace gardens. Someone important is celebrating something. It doesn't concern you. You finish your final line of the day. A neat seal. Your mark. Then you clean your tools, tie them in cloth, place them in your satchel. You bow your head in a silent prayer. Not for success, not for promotion, but for clarity, for consistency. For one more day without error, you step outside into the cooling air. The red fort looms behind you, lit with oil lamps. The Yamuna River flows quietly beyond the garden walls. You think about dinner, flatbread, perhaps lentils, and then sleep. You have 10 more farmans to transcribe tomorrow, and a courier leaves for Gujarat at sunrise. You do not shape history, but you record it, and if you are careful, quiet, and precise, your work may outlive even the empire itself. By the time you've worked as a munshi for 15 years, the sound of a reed pen dragging across paper is more familiar than your own heartbeat. You no longer count the farmans you copy or the audits you compile. You've stopped keeping track of the number of provinces you've written dispatches to. Bengal, Kabul, Ajmer, Thatta, Lahore, each a place you've mapped only in margins and currency calculations. You measure the world not in miles or mountains, but in ledgers. This morning you're assigned to a more delicate matter, drafting a revenue reconciliation order involving 3 powerful landholding nobles, or zamindars, in the province of Gujarat. There's a shortfall, not massive, but enough that someone must explain where 712 mons of wheat and a half-dozen oxen meant for military use have disappeared. You are not a judge, you are not a soldier, but your pen will determine how these men defend themselves before the royal accountants. If you phrase the order gently, it invites negotiation. If you phrase it sharply, it implies punishment. Every word you choose carries a weight far beyond its ink. You are not told this explicitly. No one ever is, but you've learned to read between the lines, especially when the margins are wide and the requests come unsigned. Your superior, the Diwan of Revenue, appears at your desk just as you finish your morning prayers. He drops a file without ceremony. Be thorough, he mutters, but diplomatic. That means one of 2 things. Someone important is involved. Someone expendable is about to be made an example. You flip through the papers. An official from Ahmedabad has written a panicked letter in crimson ink, requesting clarification about tax discrepancies and livestock counts. There's a note attached from a vakil you recognize. The same man who once had your report thrown out for being too detailed. Now he needs your precision. You begin the draft with neutral phrasing. To the custodians of land and law, greetings under the canopy of the emperor's favor. The next paragraph is trickier. You must reference the missing goods without implying theft, and imply urgency without inviting scandal. The inventory reports submitted from the Western Division indicate a variance requiring clarification. It is the will of the Diwan that a full account be rendered within 21 days. With no delay or omission. You pause. Should you include a sentence suggesting the matter will be escalated if unresolved, or is that too bold? After a moment you write, in the interest of transparency and harmony, it is advised that any discrepancy be addressed promptly, lest misunderstanding lead to unwarranted scrutiny. There, let them squirm, but let them do it politely. You send the draft to your supervisor, knowing it may be copied 24 more times, translated, sealed, and sent via caravan by dusk, and then, without fanfare, you move on to your next task, copying irrigation reports from the Deccan. These are not glamorous. They come with mud-stained paper, handwritten tables and notes about canals clogged with silt, but to you they are oddly satisfying. The numbers must add up, the water must flow. You align each entry, field names, crop yields, Rainfall figures, repair estimates. Here the empire lives in digits and ditches. A junior scribe beside you groans. He's newer, ambitious, always checking his reflection in his inkwell. He mutters something about wanting to work on court poetry. You glance at him, but say nothing. You remember when you once thought the same, but now you've come to appreciate the truth. Poetry may be remembered, but bureaucracy makes the world function. Late in the day, you're asked to visit the record vault. It's not often you're summoned there. The vault is a subterranean archive carved from sandstone, cooled by damp air and the weight of history. Inside, you are surrounded by hundreds of scrolls and ledgers, many written by hands long dead. The record keeper, an old man with one milky eye, greets you with a nod. We're missing a ledger from 1622. He says, agricultural taxes from Multan. It's supposed to be here. You help him search. Shelves of records stretch high above. Some are written in Sanskrit, some in Farsi, others in Old Turkic. You pass volumes labeled with black thread, grain yields, eastern provinces, year of the comet, military ox procurement, 1619, indigo market variations, monsoon cycle, year 1625. Eventually you find the missing volume, misfiled under medical imports. You return it to its rightful place, dust motes dancing in the light as you set it down. The record keeper smiles faintly. Thankless work, he mutters. You nod, but you understand. Someone, someday, will need this. A rebellion may rise. A famine may strike. An ambassador may ask why funds were diverted in 1622, and they will find this book because you corrected a misfiled entry. That is your service to the empire. As you leave the vault, you pass the imperial calligraphers at work, artists who ink royal decrees on cloth and gold leaf. They are admired, envied, praised. Their scripts are copied by students and sent to mosques as holy gifts. Your own handwriting is never seen. It is considered efficient, not elegant. But when their flowery lines are discarded after ceremonies, your ledgers will still be. Read in war rooms. You return to your desk as dusk settles. Another pile of reports awaits, another decree to summarize. Before closing your work, you scribble something in your notebook, a thought, half-formed. If the sword builds empires, the scribe preserves them. You pack up for the night. Your hands are stained with ink. Your back aches. But the roads are safer, the fields more productive, the treasury fuller, because you copied orders no one else wanted to read. That is the quiet power of the bureaucracy. Not glorious, but enduring. The year is now 1658. You are still a scribe, older, quieter, your beard more gray than black, your joints less patient. A new emperor sits on the peacock throne. Aurangzeb, son of Shah Jahan, has taken the crown after a brutal civil war. You copied the proclamations that declared his brothers traitors. You transcribed the orders that sent their heads to distant forts. You did not question. You wrote. That is your oath. And now, history is changing again. Loudly in court, but silently. At your desk, there is no announcement, no dramatic moment, but you know the bureaucracy is shifting. Under Shah Jahan, your work often included poetry in the margins of official reports, an artistic flourish here, a verse shared with fellow scribes. There, under Aurangzeb, that has stopped. Your orders are shorter now. Less ornate, more urgent. Your days are filled with taxation records, troop movements, and correspondence about rebellious princes in the Deccan. Still, you write. This morning, You receive a rare task, compiling a 10-year statistical report on the provincial incomes comparing wheat production and land usage from Gujarat to Awadh. It's the kind of project that requires weeks of sifting through fragile ledgers, many of them written by your own hand in years past. You lay out a dozen volumes across your table. The handwriting shifts from neat to shaky, from the elegant loops of long-retired scribes to the scrawl of junior clerks who misspell irrigation 3 different ways. You recognize your own pages, detailed, careful, perhaps too careful. You remember the ink stains that ruined your favorite kurta the night you copied that revenue appeal during a thunderstorm. You realize you've been writing history in slow motion, one entry at a time, and it's begun to show. Your eyesight fades in the evening. You use thicker pens now, less elegant but easier to control. Your back pain has turned constant. Some days you forget the names of the junior scribes, even the ones who speak to you daily. One of them, a boy named Rafiq, brings you tea most afternoons. He's curious. He asks questions no one else dares to voice. Did you ever meet the emperor? No, you reply. Have you ever made a mistake in a royal farman? You pause. Only once. I spelled the name of a tax officer with an extra dot. It delayed his appointment by 2 months. He never forgave me. Rafiq laughs, but you see how carefully he listens. You begin leaving notes for him in the margins of your own work. Guidance, small warnings, odd facts. Always double check. Place names. Be suspicious of reports written on silk. They're trying to distract you from bad math. If you must argue with a vakil, do it in writing. You realize you are training your replacement. Weeks pass. The report takes shape. You complete side-by-side tables of yield changes, sorghum, barley, indigo, rice. You annotate inconsistencies in the coastal records. You even write a long footnote questioning why Awadh's reported population is exactly the same 4 years in a row. No one will notice, probably. But you add it anyway. By now you've written over 50,000 lines of administrative text in your life. You've authored nothing. You've signed little. But you've made the decisions of kings visible, legible. Still, no one ever speaks your name aloud. One day, as you arrive, you find your desk moved. A new scribe, young, full of posture and poetry, has been given your spot by the window. You are not offended. The light hurts your eyes anyway. You're relocated near the storeroom where the candles are low and the walls sweat in monsoon season. You share a bench with 2 new clerks who write fast but sloppily. They look at you with indifference, not disrespect, just the way you once looked at old men with careful handwriting and bent fingers. You wonder, as you sit there, is this how a scribe fades? Not with disgrace, not with celebration, just quietly. One evening, Rafiq finds you dozing over an unfinished draft. He gently takes your pen and finishes the line for you. You don't correct him. It's clean, balanced. You nod. Have you ever thought about retiring? He asks. You chuckle. Retire to what? I am this desk. But in truth you've begun to dream of leaving Agra, of traveling to see the places you've written about but never visited, to see the canals of Gujarat, the gardens of Kashmir, the markets of Thatta. You will likely never go, but the thought comforts you. Your final major assignment comes unexpectedly. You are asked to prepare a tribute register, a massive compilation of all gifts sent to the emperor during his 30th regnal year. Ivory from Ceylon, horses from Persia, gold coins from Rajput rulers, manuscripts, tapestries, swords, perfumes. You list each gift, its origin, its value, its sender. Then, at the very end, you add an entry that was not requested. Item 2348, a ledger of 20 years, written in iron gall ink, containing the unnoticed history of grain and gold, collected under the gaze of those who never asked the scribe's name. You smile as you write it. You know someone will cross it out, but perhaps Rafiq will notice. You close the register, press your seal, and rise. Your knees protest. Your fingers ache, but your soul feels still. You do not know what tomorrow brings, whether you'll be asked to return, whether your tools will be placed in a drawer and forgotten, but you know this: the Empire will remember what you wrote, even if it forgets who wrote it. Final reflection. In palaces, they call it the Age of Emperors, but in storerooms and archives, it is remembered as the Age of Ink, a time when ordinary hands captured the rise and fall of a world in neat lines and fading seals. You awaken not to the clamor of the capital, but to the distant tapping of a crow on the roof thatch above you. Outside your small wooden home, the morning mist clings low to the rice fields. The land smells of wet straw, fish stock, and earth that has been worked for centuries. It is the Heian period, the year 976 by the Western calendar, and you are a villager in the Tamba province, some 2 days' walk from the imperial court in Kyoto. Not that you've ever seen Kyoto, only the messengers that pass through, cloaked in silk and pride. Here life moves by season and cycle, not decree. You sit upright, brushing sleep from your eyes with hands still calloused from yesterday's threshing. A bamboo mat supports your back. A fire pit smolders beside you, the embers long cooled. No rooster announces the hour. It is your bones that know it's time to begin. Today is ritual day. But first comes the usual work. You eat a handful of pickled radish and a small ball of rice wrapped in a leaf. Yesterday's lunch repurposed. No one wastes anything here. Least of all rice, which is not only food but currency, tax, and offering. You slip on a robe made from rough hemp cloth. It was dyed with persimmon bark last autumn, giving it an earthy hue. Practical, durable, unremarkable. In the Heian court, men wear 12 layered silks of green and lavender. You wear this and you wear it every day. You step outside barefoot into soil that remembers 100 harvests. You live in a hamlet of about 30 households, arranged in a loose crescent around a narrow man-made stream that helps water the fields. Each home is nearly identical. Wooden walls, thatched roofs, sliding doors of rice paper, and narrow dirt paths worn smooth by repetition. On this day, like most, the village is already humming. A woman down the lane is pounding millet into flour with a foot-operated pestle. 2 boys lead an ox across a narrow bridge, its hooves careful and uncertain. A pair of girls, no older than 10, carry woven baskets full of dried fish to the common storehouse. Their laughter is rare but not unwelcome. It reminds the elders that joy still exists in this village of debts and duties. You begin your work by inspecting your rice plot. It is early spring, and the paddies have been flooded by snowmelt. The Yatio water is ankle-deep, chilly, and reflective. Your face stares back at you, lined and sun-marked despite your not yet 40 years. This rice plot isn't just yours by right, it is yours by loan, assigned by the provincial governor whose agents expect their share each year. Fail to deliver enough bushels, and you could lose the land, or worse, attract the notice of tax collectors eager to seize livestock or grain from your neighbors in punishment. You work carefully. You do not complain. You do not hope for too much rain nor too little. You just work. Mid-morning, a horn sounds, not from the mountains, but from the village headman's house. It is a short, low call, signifying ritual preparation. Today is the Tsukimi no Sai, the moon-watching rite. Originally a court ceremony, but here transformed into a seasonal observance to ask for good harvest and gentle weather. In the capital, aristocrats compose poems and sip sake in decorated pavilions. Here, you'll tie bundles of rice straw, float them down the canal, and hope the gods don't mind the lack of poetry. Still, preparation is exacting. You join several others under the main pavilion, a humble wooden platform with open sides and a raised floor. The headman, a solemn man in his 50s with sparse eyebrows and a permanent limp, hands you a bundle of gohei, zigzag paper streamers attached to split bamboo sticks. Each must be placed at the four corners of the spirit offering site, a ring of stones where food, drink, and sacred rope are laid out. You walk carefully through the village with your assigned streamers. Children stop their chores to watch. One asks if the gods will eat the rice dumplings tonight. You reply that the gods don't eat, but they notice. That's all that matters. By midday, the preparation is nearly complete. A small altar has been assembled using 2 flat stones and a driftwood plank. On it sits a bowl of cooked rice, white, not mixed, pure, 3 dried persimmons on skewers, a cup of unfiltered sake, cloudy and still, a half circle of mochi, the lunar shape deliberate, and a single bundle of hemp twine coiled in a perfect spiral symbolizing continuity. These things matter more than you admit. Not because you think the gods will punish you, but because rhythm and ritual are the only things that remain consistent when harvests fail and sons fall ill. In the afternoon, an old woman named Kao begins the chanting. Her voice is thin, but strong, worn, smooth like a river stone. She chants to Inari, the deity of grain and fertility. You do not know the words. They are older than your father, maybe even older than the court in Kyoto. But the melody feels embedded in your chest. Chants once for the past season, asking pardon for what was lost. Once for the present, thanking the gods for what remains. And once for the future, offering only hope, not certainty. The entire village listens. Even the oxen are still. At dusk, you are assigned to carry one of the straw boats to the stream. It is no more than a foot long, shaped crudely like a dragon with reed wings and a small folded paper lantern set in the middle. As you lower it into the stream, the lantern flickers. The straw boat glides softly downstream, joining the others. 30 vessels for 30 families, bobbing slowly into the darkness. No one speaks for several moments. The village waits, and then a dog barks. A child giggles. An old man begins chewing loudly on roasted chestnuts. The spell breaks. Life resumes. You walk home, tired but not weary. There is comfort in tiredness. It means you have done your part. Tomorrow will bring the same chores, the same mud, the same reports of blight, the same squabble over the ox cart. But tonight, under the full moon, you lie down next to your wife and listen to the stream outside, a stream carrying prayers made of straw and hope. The morning after the Tsukimi no Sai is unusually hot. The mist has not returned, and the sky is cloudless. An omen, some say, of approaching drought, but omens are frequent, and few afford the luxury of reacting to them. You are awake early, not by choice, but by summons. A rider has arrived. You hear it first in the distance, the hollow thud of hooves over packed earth, then the hiss of impatient breath as a well-groomed Kizo pony comes into view. It's led by a man in dark, stiff robes, finely woven but worn. His name is Fushimi no Takatora, the provincial steward. He represents Kyoto, and more precisely, the Shuin, the great estate to which your land technically belongs. He is not cruel nor particularly corrupt, but he is meticulous. He expects rice tallies, grain moisture samples, ox census logs, and an exact record of days worked on the tax-free fields claimed by the temple near the village border. And today he brings with him a clerk and a thick scroll of accounting sheets. The village headman bows low. You bow too, though perhaps a moment slower. Everyone becomes very interested in how they hold their hands. You are not the target of the visit, yet Fushimi is here to inspect the granary and question 3 households accused of underreporting their yields. You are not among them, but your cousin is, and so your name may still be mentioned. As Fushimi enters the storehouse, everyone watches, not out of fear, though there's some, but out of ritual caution. The steward is the closest many will ever come to Kyoto's invisible court, a city of painted screens, poetry competitions, and scrolls whose margins are more valuable than the text. You've heard tales of the capital, of ladies whose sleeves trail like banners, of courtiers who communicate only through metaphor. But here, the only metaphor that matters is whether a rope holds or breaks when the rain comes. You spend the early morning avoiding the steward. Instead, you help an elder named Noboru repair the pounding trough, a wooden channel used for hulling rice. It's cracked along one edge, and the water doesn't flow evenly. Noboru shows you how to bind it with strips of bark, weaving them tightly, humming to himself. Even trees must be tied down to serve, he mutters. You're not sure if he's referring to the trough or to you. While you work, you glance occasionally toward the center of the village, where Fushimi's assistant unrolls the scroll again and again. You know the symbols, not kanji, but markings for weights and measures, crescent strokes for missing bundles, circles for full bushels, and the dreaded double slashes, which indicate penalty and fine. You wonder how often those symbols reflect the truth and how often they are just the will of the clerk with the brush. By midday, the steward calls a gathering. Every household sends a representative. You stand among them, shoulders tight with sweat and silence. The steward's voice is measured, his face unmoved. He praises the rituals of the night before, commends the headman for an orderly village, and notes, too calmly, that 3 families have provided less rice than required. He speaks of adjustments, not punishment, but everyone knows what that means. A goat will be seized, or an ox, or one member of the household will be conscripted to serve on the estate's roads, carrying gravel and hauling water through the next cycle. Then Fushimi does something unexpected. He produces a small lacquered box wrapped in silk. From it he pulls a narrow scroll, written not in the hand of a clerk but in the gentle, spiraling calligraphy of a woman. It is a letter from a noble lady, the mistress of the estate. She has gifted 2 bolts of silk for the village shrine in honor of a relative's safe childbirth. It is a letter from a noble lady, the mistress of the estate. She has gifted 2 bolts of silk for the village shrine in honor of a relative's safe childbirth. In return, she expects a poem, no longer than 5 lines, written by someone in the village. The crowd murmurs. A poem? Here, the headman coughs politely. He looks at you. You freeze. You wrote a short poem last year for a funeral offering and someone must have remembered. It was nothing special. 4 lines about the moon fading into mist. But now, the expectation is real. Fushimi steps toward you. Well, he says. You take a breath. The villagers wait. You look up at the sky where the sun blazes white behind a slow drift of clouds, and then quietly you speak. In fields of silence, the crane forgets to call out. Only the rice bends, Even wind knows not to stay where ropes remember binding. There is a pause. Fushimi blinks once. His assistant scribbles. Then, a nod. Acceptable. You exhale, slower than you mean to. That night, the mood in the village shifts. No ox was taken. The silk was delivered. The poem will be sent. You have become, if only briefly, a bridge between the capital and the common. Some villagers pat your shoulder, others avoid your eyes. You sit again at your fire, sipping a thin broth of root vegetables, and think of your poem, not its words, but the fact that it was heard. You wonder what else the steward saw today that he did not mention. A weak fence, a limping child, a storehouse with less grain than it should have. 2 days have passed since the steward's visit. The poem scroll has been wrapped in a cedar box and sent with the next courier, who bowed before leaving, either out of respect or habit. Either way, you're glad to see him go. You thought the moment might lift you, perhaps carry your name a little higher in the village, but the fields call louder than flattery, and you still must wake before the light to check for worms, level the paddies, and clear the irrigation channels by hand. One thing did change though. The village elder, Noboru, the one who helped you fix the rice trough, has asked you to assist him with something older than taxes. It is time, he says, to replace the sacred shimenawa. The shimenawa is a rope, but not just a rope. It is a boundary, a spiritual demarcation line separating the sacred from the everyday. It encircles a weather-worn tree on the outskirts of the village. No one cuts this tree, not even for firewood, not even in famine. It's believed to hold the guardian spirit of the hamlet. The current rope is sagging. The straw is dry and flaking. Bits of moss have begun to creep over it, which Noboru says is a bad sign. You accompany him into the hills to collect rice straw, walking along a shaded path between chestnut trees and wind-tossed bamboo. He walks slowly, and speaks even more slowly. In court they speak of beauty as a poem on paper, he says. Here it's a rope that doesn't break. You nod, unsure what to say. You spend most of the morning braiding the straw. It must be tight, uniform, and clockwise. No part of the body can cross over the rope during making. This would disturb the spirit, Noboru insists. You sit on a flat stone while he demonstrates the rhythm. 3 twists, then loop, then pull. The rope will be adorned with shide, the paper zigzags used in rituals. These you fold yourself. The corners must be sharp. Any mistake and it must be redone. There are gods in the folds, he mutters. When the rope is ready, it takes 4 villagers to carry it. The tree stands alone at the edge of a terraced hill, its bark furrowed deep like wrinkles on an old priest. A small hollow in its side is filled with ash from a previous offering. You watch as Noboru circles the tree, chanting softly, laying offerings of dried sardines, rice, and the last plum of the season. You help hang the rope, careful not to let it drag or twist. When it's in place, the wind lifts it briefly, then stills. The rope holds. On the walk back, Noboru tells you the story of the village's founding, how a wandering monk, banished from the capital, built the first hut by the riverbank. He wore robes so torn they barely held together, and planted rice without tools. The villagers say he could speak to foxes and that he cursed the land to punish greedy landlords. You ask if the story is true. Maybe, Noboru says. Maybe the monk was just someone like us, doing what he had to. That night, a light rain falls. It is not enough to threaten the harvest, but enough to slow your chores. So you sit under the eaves with your younger cousin, Tama, sharpening a sickle on a whetstone. He asks about the steward's visit, about the poem, About the silk scroll, you deflect most of it with shrugs, but when he presses, you tell him the truth. That poem, they won't remember it, not really, but they might remember that we didn't look like fools, that we sent something. Thomas seems disappointed. So it doesn't matter? You look at the rope you helped make, now drying under the eaves. You think about the chant, the straw boats, the rice paddies, and the fields that asked nothing but everything. It matters that we remember it, you say finally, even if they don't. A few days later, an old man dies. He wasn't sick, just old and quiet, and one day he simply stopped waking. There is no priest in the village, but the headman performs a quiet rite. You help dig the shallow grave. The soil is stubborn and damp. The scent of wet earth clings to your skin. At the funeral, someone asks you to speak again. You decline at first, but then, as the wind picks up and the shimenawa rustles faintly in the trees, you say, "A cup once filled now waits in the cupboard. Still clean, still silent, not broken, just empty now. It isn't elegant, but it is enough." Afterward, people linger longer than usual. There is no feast, but there is a pot of barley tea, a few pickled plums, and stories exchanged in low voices. Noboru claps you on the back, then leans close. "You could have been a scribe," he says. "In another life." You laugh. But then, who would make the rope? As you walk home under a half-moon sky, your thoughts drift. You wonder about the court ladies in Kyoto, about whether your poem made someone pause, even for a breath. You wonder about the steward, if he remembered your name, and you wonder about your cousin Tama, who listens more than he speaks. But mostly, you think of the rope, of rituals so old no one knows their beginning, but everyone knows their end. And you understand something you didn't before. The poem is not the legacy. The doing is, the braiding of rope, the mending of channels, the chanting under the tree, the planting of rice year after year, even when the yields fail. These are the stories that don't make the court records, but hold the world together. Closing reflection. In the court chronicles of the Heian period, names are listed, ranks recorded, and poems preserved. But the lives of those in the villages, those who built, planted, chanted, and carried straw boats into streams, are mostly unwritten, and yet without them, there is no empire, only paper. The candle is trimmed with a piece of broken reed. You do this by habit, not urgency. The room is dim, the walls bare save for a scroll rack and a rough-hewn table. Ink soaks into the stone surface where years of record-keeping have left a permanent watermark of the state's memory. You are a scribe in the Tang Dynasty, in the Ministry of Revenue. You've worked every day of your adult life save the month you had fever, and even then, you managed to dictate a census summary from your cot. It is past midnight and your shift, the fifth night watch, has only just begun. Outside, Chang'an sleeps in pockets. Some neighborhoods still flicker with oil lamps and quiet string music, but here in the bureaucratic quarter, silence reigns. The palace lies to the north. You will not see it tonight. Your world is this desk, this inkstone, and these numbers. Tonight's task is simple, as all tasks are. It is to copy and double verify the tallies of millet taxation from the Fengyi prefecture, a prosperous district famed for both its river silks and its consistent grain surpluses. You know it well. You've copied their ledgers for 8 seasons. You light another candle just in case. The hours ahead are long. Each scroll is written in a slightly different hand. First the prefect, then the local counter, then the imperial overseer, and, finally, your own marginalia in black vermilion to confirm totals. A single error means delays, and delays mean memoranda, and memoranda mean blame. You have avoided blame for years. This is a badge of quiet pride, though no one speaks of such things. You unroll the first document. It begins like they all do, with the formal address. In obedience to the Son of Heaven's mandate, the grains of Fengyi gathered under the guidance of heaven, and according to the 5 elements, have been recorded in full. You don't read this part anymore. Instead, your eyes scan for the crucial numerals. Tons of millet, number of registered households, the proportion of tax kept for army provisioning versus civil stores. There are 12 columns per scroll. You must reconcile them against a secondary account provided by a traveling auditor who never met the local scribes and was likely distracted by wine and hospitality. Your pen scratches across the parchment, one stroke at a time. You sip from a tepid clay cup. Not tea. Tea would be too luxurious at this hour. Just warm barley water. You have not tasted sugar in weeks. The ministry building is made of brick and stone, with timber beams that creak like old men whispering gossip. The only sounds now are the slow drip of water from a crack in the wall and the occasional flutter of bats above the ceiling tiles. You've grown used to them. Your hand cramps around the brush, so you flex it once, twice, and press on, across. From you, another scribe snores softly. His name is Lu Yanjun, though everyone calls him Second Brush, because his writing is always slightly blurred, as if his hand moves before his thoughts have quite formed. He'll wake in a few hours, and resume his tally of silk import licenses. You are supposed to train him, though no one ever formally asked you to. This is how bureaucracy grows, not through orders, but through expectation ossified into routine. By the second candle, your mind begins to drift, not away from the scrolls, but deeper into them. You think of the lives behind the numbers, the farmer who declared 4 bushels but offered 6. Hoping to curry favor, the widow listed as non-productive, but who still labored in her garden, the boy recorded as deceased, though he walked again within the month, having merely fainted in the summer sun. You have never met these people, but their lives repeat in your ledgers like ghosts, whispering in numbers. Sometimes you wonder if you know them better than your own cousins. Halfway through the pile, you catch a discrepancy. A small one. Column 7, millet for military granary, lists 9,601 bushels, but the secondary account says 9,000 out of 16. You reread. Check the sums. Compare against the harvest reports for that season. Yes, that was the year of the spring flood. Grain loss was expected. So where did the extra 585 bushels come from? You have 3 choices. Correct the figure and flag the discrepancy. Ignore it, chalk it up to a counting error and match the original. Draft a memorandum to request clarification from the prefecture, which will take 2 weeks. You sigh. You already know what you'll do. You reach for the red brush and write, discrepancy noted, verified as surplus or copying error, no corrective, action pending further verification. Clerk, Zhang. You do this knowing no one will follow up, but the mark will exist, a kind of quiet defense, in case someone looks back one day. It is all a game of recorded innocence. The candle gutters. You trim it again. The light flickers on the edge of your inkstone, reflecting faintly in the pooled black. You think of how many names have passed through your hands, how many towns, how many scrolls, how many hours. The numbers never change, only the people who hold the brush. As the horizon begins to pale, you finish the final scroll. You seal the Stack with twine and place it carefully in the repository alcove. You do this with reverence not for the papers but for the order they represent. The emperor will never see them, perhaps not even a minister, but someone someday may need to know how many bushels passed through fungi in the year of the small flood, and when they do, your brushstroke will guide them. Unresolved thought for Section 2. What happens to those whose names never reach the scroll? And how does history remember what the scribe forgets? By mid-morning, the Ministry of Revenue is humming, not bustling. Not yet. The halls of government don't bustle so much as simmer. Scribes like you file reports, tally grain, log shipments of silk and write memoranda that may never be read. The floor is worn from generations of slippers and sandals. The wall hangings speak in faded reds and blues about order, merit, and harmony. But harmony is hard-won here. It takes 5 copies of every scroll to achieve. You carry your sealed scroll bundle to the archival annex. There, a clerk named Pei Hualin, thin as a reed and twice as likely to snap, meets you with his usual expression, bland suspicion. Revenue tallies from Fengyi Prefecture, you announce, not because he doesn't know, but because protocol demands it. He takes the bundle, weighs it in his hands, not for heft, but for consistency, and examines the clay seals on the twine. Each seal is pressed with your personal chop, marked with a character that means still water. You chose it long ago because it was unremarkable. Discrepancy noted? Pei Hualin asks flatly. 1, you reply. Military allocation, flagged. He nods and writes a tiny mark in the margin of the ledger scroll, barely the width of a rice grain. Then the bundle disappears into a row of wooden cubbies. Unless summoned, it will never be seen again. You return to your desk. A new stack awaits. This one is from Jiangzhou, on the Yangtze. The characters are written in flowing, exaggerated brushwork, clearly the work of someone who trained in calligraphy before numbers. You frown, knowing that this means long hours deciphering whether a particularly artistic curl is a 3 or an 8. Before you begin, Lu Yanjun, your fellow scribe, wakes up with a snort. Did I miss anything? You glance at him. Only the end of millet season. He rubs his face, yawns, and stretches. His robes are rumpled, and a smear of dried ink rests on his sleeve like a badge. He'll begin logging this week's canal repair notices, a less tedious task, but no less crucial. He groans as he reads. Why does every local magistrate write as if he's composing a love letter to his own infrastructure? You allow yourself a rare smile, because canals are the only thing that bring joy to both peasants and tax collectors. Around midday, a commotion stirs near the front gate. A palace courier has arrived. This is rare. Most communications pass through layers of clerks, but the gold-tasseled messenger, wearing the plum-colored robes of an inner court agent, brushes past the ministry's outer staff with the casual urgency of someone above reprimand. A hush falls over your floor as he hands a scroll to Director Shu himself, a man you've seen speak no more than 6 words in a year. He nods, signs, and walks off. Lu Yanjun whistles softly. Imperial audit or census correction, you offer. Either way, it means someone will be reassigned, promoted, or demoted. Possibly all 3, depending on whose handwriting is deciphered. The courier's scroll isn't your concern, but word soon spreads. The court is requesting archival clarification on a batch of reports from a decade ago. Harvest data from the northern provinces during the year of drought. That year, you remember it well. You had just begun your tenure. The ink barely felt familiar in your hand. The brushes still slipped, your posture still crooked, your stomach still growling from skipped breakfasts. You remember copying those reports. And also the whispered pressure from a senior clerk. Make the yield estimate slightly higher, but not suspiciously so. You complied. Now you wonder if your brushstroke from so long ago will come under scrutiny. You decide to visit the old archives. A stone annex with no windows. Just slitted holes in the walls for airflow and dust management. Scrolls here are stacked by region and year, organized by a clerk named Liang, who has not been seen in public since the turn of the century. You find him still at his post, huddled under a tattered felt blanket even though the air is warm. He wears reading lenses, polished to clarity, a rare luxury in your world. I need Year of Drought, Taiyuan District. Section 4. State granaries. Liang does not speak. He simply turns, walks to a stack, and after a silent, painful minute of shuffling scrolls, produces the right one. You take it back to your desk with reverence. The paper crackles like dry leaves. There it is. Your handwriting, younger, slightly rounder, less sure. You trace your own name written in the final line. Clerk, Zhang, newly appointed, verified by senior scribe. You feel a strange sense of disconnection, as if this person is no longer you. You compare it to the palace inquiry scroll, and realize the figures don't quite match. The palace version reports a 25% shortfall in millet, with only partial granary recovery. Your version, 17%. Enough to raise an eyebrow. You sit in silence. Correcting it now would look like forgery. Denying it could invite investigation. You could blame the senior scribe, but he's long retired, likely dead. In the bureaucracy, truth is often a matter of survival by footnote. So you pick up your brush. Not the red one, the black. You write, in comparison with the imperial audit version, this record shows minor variance, possibly due to regional reporting delays or post-submission corrections. Figures not intentionally distorted to best of clerk's knowledge. Clerk, Zhang. Then you sign. With a steadier hand than before. You will sleep lightly tonight. Later, as you're preparing to leave, Lu Yanjun asks you something strange. Do you ever think we're just building a palace of paper? Something no one will remember? You pause, scrolls in hand. No, you say. We're building the stairs. He frowns. So someone else can climb? No, you say again. So someone else can say the stairs were always there. It is now the third day since the imperial audit scroll arrived. The ministry is no longer simmering, it is tense. Quiet footsteps echo more sharply. Scribes work without conversation. Every brushstroke seems heavier, as though the ink carries not just numbers, but consequence. A new edict has been posted outside the director's door. All clerks are to review past entries for inconsistencies prior to summary submission, which is a polite way of saying, check your old work before someone else does. You reread your scrolls from the Year of Drought, this time with fresh eyes. The granary tallies, the supply reports, the local scribes' names, many of whom you've forgotten. You begin to notice subtle discrepancies, not just your own but throughout the system. Names reused, numbers rounded, whole seasons blurred. You realize something deeply uncomfortable. You weren't covering up a shortfall. You were following precedent. The records were already bent before they reached your hands. They had been shaped by fear, by pressure, by the quiet push of provincial magistrates eager to avoid imperial reprimand. You were merely the last in a line of ink bearers, You take your concerns to Deputy Director Liu, an older woman with a reputation for precision and very little patience for vagueness. You present the two scrolls, the palace's copy and your original. These don't match, you say, but it may have started upstream. The local records were optimistic. She glances through both documents. Her fingers are stained from decades of ink. Her expression remains unreadable. After a moment, she says, "Do not revise. Do not comment further." You blink, but the inquiry has already reached its conclusion, she says. They will not pursue minor inconsistencies. We're within the acceptable error margin. But, Zhang, she interrupts, you've done your duty. Go back to your desk. You nod and return to your seat. That night, for the first time in years, you visit the outer wall of the capital. It's late. The city is quiet. Lanterns sway in the wind, casting amber shadows along the whitewashed bricks. You sit by a guard tower and listen to the breeze, not for meaning, just to remember what stillness feels like. You think of the men and women who built these walls. Their names are not written anywhere. No scroll holds their story, yet the wall remains. You wonder, is it better to be remembered as a name on a scroll, or as the anonymous force behind something solid? You return to the ministry at dawn. The audit concludes with no further incident. The director issues a quiet memo. Record satisfactory. Resume standard operations. It's a victory of sorts. Quiet, paper-thin but meaningful. You go back to grain counts, rice exports, and canal permits. The monotony returns like a tide. But so does the comfort. Liu Yanjun finishes his first full annual report. You pat him on the shoulder and mark it with a minor correction, then nod your approval. He beams like he's passed an imperial exam. The quiet pride in your chest feels heavier than any scroll. Years pass. Your ink grows steadier. Your signature shorter. You begin to train younger clerks. People who look at you the way you once looked at your own mentors. You tell them to check totals twice, never skip marginalia, and always leave a record of why a number changed. You don't tell them about the year of drought. You don't need to. Eventually, the emperor dies. A new one takes the throne. The palace. Banners change color. The coins are reminted. Some ministers retire. Some vanish. But the Ministry of Revenue remains. And so do you. Your name is now attached to 100,000 scrolls. You've documented 2 famines, 3 floods, 1 rebellion, and the sudden disappearance of an entire prefecture's tea harvest. Still unexplained. But no one will remember your face. One day, you are called to the archive for a final task. Liang, the silent old archivist, has died. You are asked to help reorganize his holdings. You enter the room and stare at the endless shelves of scrolls, sealed and sorted by men long gone. You pick one at random. It's your handwriting. The grain totals. From Jiangzhou. You remember it vaguely. You open it, and for the first time you understand. You weren't just a scribe. You were a memory machine. You kept the empire's nervous system intact, one numeral at a time. That night, back at your own desk, you unroll a fresh scroll, not for a report, but for a memoir. You title it, On Ink and Time, Reflections of a Bureaucrat. Not to publish, not to be read, just to mark that you were here, and that for a brief flicker of time you bore the weight of millions of lives in columns and rows. Reflection. The empire may forget its scribes, but its roads, its harvests, and its ledgers are built on their backs. In the end, what survives is not glory, but record. And in that quiet permanence, perhaps there is a kind of immortality. You wake before the sun, wrapped in the quiet stillness of the desert plateau. The wind has not yet risen. The air is cold and dry, smelling faintly of wool, clay, and distance. Around you, the caravan camp lies still, just a dozen bundled shapes, under rough tents and woolen cloaks. Somewhere nearby, a donkey snorts and resumes chewing. The camels grunt in their sleep, lying like ships docked on an ocean of dust. You are 16, and you are a shepherdess, not one of legend, not a poetic one. Your job is to keep the sheep alive, moving, and accounted for as they cross this strip of Central Asia known as Gansu, wedged between the northern edge of the Tibetan Plateau and the yellow dunes that stretch toward the western kingdoms. You were born here. Your parents were born farther east. Peasants who fled flooding and taxes and found life among the edgeworlders. Traders, smugglers, pilgrims, guards, and nomads. The Silk Road is not one road. It is many veins crossing an enormous body, and you are a capillary, barely seen but carrying the lifeblood of grain, salt, wool, and dried apricots. Your flock is awake before the merchants, and so are you. You rise from your bedroll and stretch. Your hands are cracked. The knuckles ache from cold. You find your sheepskin coat, still damp from last night's condensation, and pull it on. It smells of lanolin and fire smoke. There's no mirror here, but you don't need one. You know your own face, sun-darkened, wind-chafed, and marked with the quiet watchfulness of those who live in places where news travels slower than the seasons. You step outside the tent and whistle, low. Your lead sheep responds with a soft bleat. They're still huddled near the windbreak. 62 heads, some pregnant, some old, all of them equally stubborn. This is not your flock. It belongs to Old Wen, a merchant who contracts you seasonally, to manage the livestock section of his caravan. You get paid in grain, dried plums, and a few iron coins, enough to support your grandmother and younger brother back at the winter settlement. You've walked nearly 120 li, about 60 kilometers, with this flock since the last town. Your feet are blistered inside cracked boots. You haven't had warm food since 2 nights ago, when a Kazakh trader shared fermented mare's milk and something that might have been roasted marmot. But the sheep are alive. That's your job. Mid-morning, the camp begins to stir. You see Old Wen wrapped in crimson layers, his gray beard stiff with frost. He's arguing with a camel driver about load weight and axle strain. A Persian-speaking spice seller pours tea from a battered copper kettle. 2 Buddhist monks from Dunhuang are brushing sand off their scrolls and quietly reciting sutras. You spot Yanjun, the caravan's only soldier, leaning on his spear and staring westward with half-lidded eyes. He hasn't said much since joining the caravan last week, but he always nods when he passes you. You nod back. Here, everyone nods more than they speak. Too many languages, too little trust. Today's route follows a narrow canyon north of the Kilian Mountains. The terrain is tough for the wagons, but ideal for sheep. Hard-packed, crumbly, soil and enough scrub to nibble along the edges. You herd your flock with a practiced rhythm, sharp whistles, rock throws, and a crooked staff carved from mountain juniper. You learned all this from your mother who died when you were 10. You never cry about her. There's no time for crying in the wind. But sometimes, when the wind is very still and the sun very warm, you hear her voice in your own commands. By early afternoon, the sky shifts. A low hiss creeps in from the east, soft at first, then building into a whistle, then a roar. You freeze. Sandstorm, someone shouts. The word is passed like fire through the camp. Traders scramble to cover wares. Camels are gathered, tied tight. Tarps fly, tents drop. You do what your mother taught you. Drive the sheep into a gully, as low as possible, away from open space. The animals resist. You force them down with your arms, your voice, your staff. One of the older ewes bucks and runs. You don't have time to chase her. The sky turns gold, then brown, then black. You pull your scarf tight over your mouth and drop into the gully with your flock. The wind howls above like a god angry at being forgotten. The storm lasts less than an hour, but it feels eternal. You cough sand from your throat, blinking through tears. All around you, the world has been repainted in ochre and shadow. When the storm passes, the caravan looks like a battlefield. Camels lie buried halfway. Scrolls are scattered. A wagon has tipped, but no one is dead. That counts as a win. Old Wen finds you. Lost any? He asks, voice dry. One you admit. He squints at the sky. One's fair. Then he walks off. That's the only praise you'll get. That night, around a sand-dulled fire, the caravan regroups. The monks chant. The spice seller offers you a bit of nutmeg and rice wine. Even the soldier Yanjun leans over and says, "Good herding. Your sheep stayed calmer than my camel." You nod. That's enough. As you curl up that night wrapped in your coat and the smell of wet wool, you think about something the monk said earlier. One had whispered it to the other, believing no one else could hear. When the wind moves the sand, it covers mistakes and reveals bones. You think about that lost you, about your mother, about bones beneath the dunes, forgotten travelers, crushed merchants, shepherds no one recorded. You wonder, will anyone remember you when this road is no longer used? When the sand covers your trail, and all that's left is the quiet crunch of time? The morning after the storm, the sky is unusually clear. The dust has settled, and in its place comes a brief, solemn clarity, like the world itself is catching its breath. You wake with stiff joints and dry lips, your face still gritty despite last night's rinse. Around you, the caravan rustles to life with the slow determination of people who have learned not to curse the sky. You tie your scarf more tightly today. Your ears still ring faintly from the wind. The missing you has not returned. You do a head count. Twice. 61. The flock looks shaken but otherwise intact. Their eyes blink slowly in the pale light, indifferent to the catastrophe they survived. No, one praises sheep for survival, but you know what it took. The caravan moves more slowly today. Wagon wheels groan against sand-choked ruts. The trail ahead is hidden beneath new dunes, and Old Wen insists on sending scouts. The air tastes metallic. Everything feels exposed. And yet, there is beauty. The Silk Road was never just about silk. It was and is a ribbon of survival stretched across brutal land. And beauty clings to survival like a burr on a camel's side. You see it today in small things. The monk handing water to a coughing horse. A carved charm someone hung from the saddle of an ox. The way a Persian merchant says thank you in broken Chinese as you help lift his crate of glass beads. Each person here speaks their own dialect of resilience, even if their mouths disagree. You walk beside the sheep, eyes scanning the horizon. It's part habit, part necessity. There are bandits in these parts, and worse, loneliness that makes people strange. But the only thing you see today is a single figure on the ridge, cloaked in red and leading a single pack animal. He doesn't wave, doesn't approach. You watch him for a while, and then he's gone. Old Wen once said, "Out here, you don't ask who people are. If they want to be seen, they'll tell you. So you don't ask. But you don't forget either." At midday, the caravan pauses beside an old way station. It's little more than a crumbled stone enclosure and a half-buried well. You help collect water with a gourd line, passing containers hand to hand. The monks chant blessings over the bucket. Some merchants mutter prayers of their own. Faith on the road is not about philosophy. It's insurance. You share a flat cake with Yanjun, the caravan guard. He sits with his spear across his knees, eyeing the western horizon. His armor is mismatched, and his boots are clearly from a different region. He's not a professional soldier, probably a discharged conscript or worse, a mercenary. You move like someone who's been walking since birth, he says, chewing slowly. "I have," you reply. He nods and looks back at the horizon. It's not easy, carrying lives like that. You don't respond. But he's right. You've carried lives, your flock, your family, without being asked. Sometimes survival feels like a tax you keep paying for someone else's debt. In the late afternoon, the terrain changes. You reach a flat stretch of ancient salt flats, and the sheep begin to limp. Their hooves don't like the slick crust. You dig out some spare padding from your pack, scraps of old saddle leather, and tie them under the worst-off animals. No one offers to help, but they watch. The monk nods. Old Wen grunts. The soldier stands a little closer than usual. It's not praise, it's trust. And it's rarer than coin. That night, a small incident. One of the younger merchants loses a crate of glass beads. A jolt from the road knocks it off the back of the cart, and the crate smashes, beads scattering like frozen tears into the salt. For a moment, everyone stops. No one speaks. You walk over. Quietly. Without a word, you begin picking them up. One by one, others follow. Within minutes, half the caravan is crawling across the ground, brushing sand and grit from tiny glinting orbs. The monk places them into a silk pouch. The merchant says nothing, but his eyes are wet. Sometimes the road teaches you a thing no temple can. Grace without reason. Later, under a cold sky strewn with stars, you sit alone with your sheep. Most are asleep, curled in pairs. One is awake, chewing slowly and staring at the moon. You whisper a story your mother used to tell. Not for the sheep, not for yourself, but for the silence. You think again about the monk's words from the road that forgets, the heart that remembers. The final stretch into Dunhuang begins before the sun rises. You hear old Wen before you see him, his gravelly voice slicing through the last of sleep like a blade through sheepskin. Up we walk before the wind does. You pack quickly. The sheep stir, bleating softly. You count them again, 61. The lost ewe never returned. Perhaps she found a new herd. Perhaps she became the wind's supper. You try not to dwell. There's little romance in survival, but still, there is honor in showing up, in keeping track, in finishing the journey you start. Dunhuang lies still half a day's walk ahead, nestled where the desert meets the cliffs. For centuries, it has stood as a sentinel, guarding, receiving, witnessing. It is not the center of the world, but a necessary pause in its rhythm. You've been there once before, 2 years ago, in midwinter. You remember the carved grottos, the painted saints, the old man who sold fermented turnip tea. But this time, you enter as something more than a wide-eyed girl with a flock. You are part of a caravan, part of a thread in a much older tapestry. The road rises, then flattens. The salt flats give way to packed clay and old riverbeds, the terrain softening as if welcoming you. Birds reappear, swift and silent, darting across the road like messengers of luck. You feel a subtle shift in your body, not relief exactly, but release. Beside you, Yanjun stretches his arms, yawns, and says, "We'll make it before the midday bell." You nod, but you don't rush. There's something sacred about these last few miles. They deserve your footsteps, not just your arrival. As you walk, you pass the bones. They are half buried, scattered along the edge of the path. Not recent, sun-bleached, possibly camel, possibly not. Someone has stacked a few stones nearby in the shape of a cairn. You pause, just for a moment. The others keep walking, but you stay and take one more stone from the ground. You place it gently on the pile, not saying a word. Your mother used to do this for people she never met. She said stones remembered even when people didn't. Then you walk on. The gates of Dunhuang appear like ghosts through the rising heat. The first signs are smell before sight. Smoke from breakfast fires, dung-burning stoves, the metallic tang of irrigation canals. Then, the outline of walls, wooden watchtowers, colorful flags, and finally, people, not travelers but townsfolk, children, guards, shopkeepers, pilgrims, scribes. The caravan stops at the checkpoint. There are ledgers to be inspected, licenses, fees. You don't go to the city gate yet. You stay behind with the flock guiding them to the caravanserai just outside the city's main entrance. A boy offers water for a coin. You hand him one of old Wen's copper pieces. He asks your name. You pause. "No one important," you say. He grins. "No one ever is. Not here." Then he runs off, laughing. The caravan disperses. Some to inns, some to the market. The monks vanish toward the cliffs, scrolls in tow. Yanjun gives you a lazy wave before disappearing into the western quarter. Maybe he'll catch another caravan, maybe not. Old Wen pays you quietly in a side courtyard. 2 small sacks of millet, a pouch of iron coins, and a wrapped bundle of something heavier. You open it to find a pair of soft leather boots. I noticed. Your feet, he says gruffly, not meeting your eyes. You walk better than my camels. Figure you earned them. You bow low. He grunts and walks away. It's the most kindness he'll ever show you. With the coins, you buy dried mango, a comb, and a bamboo flute for your younger brother. You carry it all in your bag, along with the boots. You're not staying in Dunhuang long, just enough to rest, trade, and move east. The sheep, they'll be sold to a buyer from Anxi. You walk them to the pens yourself. One by one they're counted, tagged, measured for weight and coat quality. The buyer is efficient and dispassionate, but before he leaves he turns and asks, "Good flock?" You nod. He pauses. I'll note it. You don't know what he means, but you say thank you anyway. That evening, before leaving the city, you climb to the edge of the Mughal grottos, the famous painted caves carved into the cliffside, home to hundreds of Buddhist murals and statues. Pilgrims pass you, heads bowed, lips murmuring prayers. You sit in silence and listen to the wind brushing against the cliff. Somewhere below, a scribe reads aloud from a scroll. His voice drifts up. The path is long, the dust unending, but the traveler's name is carved not in stone, only in the heart of the road. You don't know the source, but it feels like it was written for you. You sit there until the sun sets, painting the desert in strokes of bronze and blue, and then quietly, without ceremony, you rise and walk east, back to your family, back to work, back to being forgotten by the records, by the cities, by history, but not by the road. Final reflection. Most footsteps vanish. Most names fade. But for a brief stretch of time, a shepherdess walked 61 sheep across the Silk Road. And that was enough. The sun has only just risen over Baghdad, and already the ink stains your fingertips. You sit cross-legged in the quiet of the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. Outside, the streets of the Abbasid capital awaken with spice vendors, camel trains, and the faint metallic clatter of armor from palace guards. But here, in this long chamber filled with shelves and scrolls and silence, your world is smaller. A candle still flickers from your overnight vigil. You had not meant to fall asleep again in the margins of a Greek medical treatise, but the text has been stubborn, full of foreign words and looping logic, the kind only philosophers dare to string together in so many parts. Galen, you think. Always Galen. You stretch, wincing at the stiffness in your back, and dip your reed pen back into the inkwell. It is time to translate. The caliph's city pulses with grand design. Baghdad, at its height, is a city of circles, deliberately drawn like the diagrams in the books you copy. At the very center lies the round city, the seat of power. But wisdom, the scholars say, is not always found in the center. Sometimes it blooms in the edges, in a room like yours, where parchment breathes and time slows. You are not a great scholar. You are not a patron or a poet. You are a scribe, barely 20, fluent in Arabic, conversational in Syriac, slow but improving in Greek. You are a daughter of a bookseller and a mother who once taught Quranic recitation to children. You came to this house not by invitation, but by quiet persistence. Now, you're entrusted with translation, not of grand ideas, but of diagrams, inventories, annotations, the glue that binds thought. You are one of many, and still, Essential. Today's task is deceptively simple. You are working on an astronomical chart originally compiled by Ptolemy, copied centuries ago in Alexandria, passed through hands in Antioch, smuggled to Damascus, and now resting in your lap. The parchment smells of old leather and myrrh. Your job: translate a marginal commentary from Syriac into Arabic, preserving all diagrams, celestial coordinates, and mathematical footnotes. You sigh. It's like threading a needle with air. You begin by murmuring the words aloud. An old habit. It helps steady your rhythm. The ninth fixed star appears at the edge of Taurus, beneath the light of the second planet. Your hand moves steadily. The ink pools. Your world contracts to quills and curves. You forget to breathe. At mid-morning, you are interrupted by Master Harun, one of the senior translators. He walks with a limp and carries a curved staff, more for flair than function. He peers over your shoulder, squinting. Still at Ptolemy? Yes, master. He grunts. He's overvalued but consistent. You nod. He drops a fresh sheet of parchment beside you. When you finish that, I need you to revise this. Al-Khwarizmi's new calculations on solar declination. Neater this time. Last copy had flourishes like a wedding contract. Yes, master. He lingers. Did you sleep here again? You hesitate, then nod. He sighs. Ink before rest. That's what they'll put on your tomb. You smile faintly, but he's not wrong. You take a break to wash your hands and eat a few figs. In the courtyard, two philosophers debate the ethics of translating Indian logic into Arabic frameworks. You don't know enough to follow, but you understand the rhythm. Every scholar speaks in tides. You're learning to swim. You return to your desk, feeling the day's heat seep through the tiled walls. The chart awaits. You align your straight edge. You dip your pen. You continue. In the quiet, you think about your father. He taught you how to hold a quill, not like a dagger, but like a prayer. He died 5 winters ago, from a fever that silenced half your neighborhood. But he left behind 2 things: his worn collection of poetry and a love for ink that even grief couldn't erase. You think, too, about your brother, apprenticed now to a merchant. He thinks your work is pointless. He once said, "Who needs old books when the markets decide what survives?" You didn't answer, but now and then as you press ink into paper, you remember his words and quietly prove them wrong. By noon, the chart is finished. You sign the bottom. Not your full name, just a simple mark, known only to the librarian. Many female scribes go unsigned. It is safer that way. The work is what matters. You carry the scroll to the archive, walking slowly down the hall where the real treasures live. Scrolls of Indian medicine, Coptic astronomy, Persian treatises on soil, Hebrew poetry. You are a ghost among ghosts, each shelf a mausoleum of brilliance. You place your scroll gently between 2 volumes. It may be untouched for decades, or centuries, or it may be read tomorrow by a student you'll never meet. Either way, it's done. You return to your seat, stretch your aching fingers, and unwrap the bundle Master Harun gave you. The scribe of sand and ink. A day inside the Abbasid translation movement. The sun creeps westward as the house of wisdom hums with quiet purpose. Outside, Baghdad bakes in golden heat. But here in the shaded interior, time dilates. You sit once again at your wooden desk, surrounded by scrolls, loose pages, and the faint scent of cedar and dust. A clean sheet of parchment is spread before you. Your tools: knife, reed, ink, sand. are arranged with precision. To someone else, this might seem like clutter. To you, it is the geometry of thought. You've spent the past hour copying an algebraic manuscript. Every figure must be perfect. One misplaced numeral, one smudge, and the formula's meaning collapses like a mismeasured dome. Still, you're not hurried. In the House of Wisdom, precision is the highest form of respect. You sharpen your reed pen and begin the next line. The ink flows slowly today. It is a mix made from soot, gum arabic, and water steeped in gall nuts. An ancient recipe passed between scribes for generations. Some use oil lamp soot. You prefer date pit ash. It gives the black a richer tone, and it doesn't smudge as much in the heat. As you write, a low murmur rises from the far end of the room. You glance up. A visitor has entered, accompanied by 2 guards in polished brass helmets. He is tall, well-dressed, and speaks with the clipped authority of someone used to being obeyed. You don't recognize him, but you notice something strange. Master Harun stands to greet him. That almost never happens. The visitor's voice carries. He wants to commission a translation, a rare scroll of Zoroastrian origin, written in Middle Persian and recovered from the ruins near Ctesiphon. He offers gold. He wants the work done quickly, and he insists on confidentiality. You pretend to keep working, but your ears are open. Eventually, Harun nods. We'll assign a pair of scribes. Quiet ones. The visitor glances around. His eyes pass over you and move on. You exhale slowly. Then, without being called, you begin to prepare a fresh sheet of parchment. You've been chosen for stranger tasks before. By late afternoon, a wrapped bundle arrives at your desk. The scroll is older than anything you've handled before. Its leather casing is cracked, and the wax seal has half flaked away. Inside, the writing is faded, written in tight, looping script. The letters are alien but not completely unfamiliar. You recognize Pahlavi, a script that barely survives outside Zoroastrian priesthood. Your job, prepare it for translation, not to understand it. That will fall to the language scholars. But to clean it, copy it, preserve its illustrations, and log every visible character into the translation archive. It's work meant for someone methodical, someone invisible, someone like you. As you unroll the parchment, you see the first illustration, a flame, stylized and rising from a metal urn. Beneath it, a diagram of concentric circles, stars, calendars, spiritual planes. Beside it, a set of instructions in tidy red ink. Not a spell, a ritual. You copy it exactly, line for line, smudge for smudge. Evening approaches. Someone brings a tray of lentils, figs, and date cake to your desk, a gift from another scribe. Nora, most likely. She always remembers who forgets to eat. You nibble, quietly, eyes scanning the ancient characters. They seem to shift on the page, not with magic, but with age. You wonder how long this scroll sat untouched before the visitor acquired it. You wonder, too, why he wants it now. There is a rumor, whispered among the junior scribes, that certain scrolls, especially those from pre-Islamic faiths, are being gathered not to preserve knowledge, but to hide it. You don't know if it's true, but you copy faster, just in case. The candlelight deepens. Shadows pool like ink in the corners of the library. You pause to stretch your arms, rub your eyes, and breathe in the paper-dry air. In this moment, you realize something strange. You're not just copying anymore. You're understanding only fragments, bits. of structure, tone, logic, but enough to guess what the text is doing. It describes cycles of time, of light, of rebirth. It draws connections between the position of stars and the turning of souls. This isn't just ritual. It's cosmology. Someone once mapped the sky to map the self. Later that night, you bring your notes to Master Harun's office. He reads them, silently, tapping his fingers against the desk. Then he says, "Did you read any of it?" You hesitate, then answer honestly, "Some." He sighs. "Of course you did." You wait. He lowers his voice. "This one is dangerous." You frown. "Because it's heretical?" He shakes his head. "Because it's compelling." You say nothing. He closes the folder and locks it in the wooden archive chest. "That will be all." But as you leave, he adds softly, "Thank you. You are unusually precise. It's the closest thing to praise he's ever given you." You walk away with a strange mix of pride and unease. That night, you don't return to the scribe's dormitory. Instead, you go to the rooftop of the House of Wisdom. From there, you can see the lights of Baghdad flickering like stars spilled across the earth. The Tigris glints silver in the moonlight. A muezzin calls the final prayer of the day. You think of the scroll, of stars and circles, of truth wrapped in ink. What if the scroll was not meant to survive this long? And what if, in copying it, you've made its ideas eternal? The night is deeper now. The stars above Baghdad blink lazily in the haze of desert heat, and a late breeze carries the scent of cardamom and burnt sugar from street vendors packing up their carts. The sounds of the city have faded. No more shouting from merchants, no more clatter from donkey carts. Only the soft hush of the wind across rooftops and the slow creak of old wood in the beams of the House of Wisdom. You are alone in the copy room again, but this time it's by design. The scroll is in front of you once more. The Zoroastrian manuscript, barely legible in parts, whispers its ancient logic. You've now transcribed most of it, cleanly, carefully, double-checked by lamplight. You've added no commentary, just margin notes where ink has faded, but something lingers at the end of the scroll, a blank space that's not quite blank. Your eyes adjust. There, impressed into the vellum, visible only at a shallow angle, a shape, a symbol, not drawn but pressed. You shift your lamp. The light catches it. It's a diagram. Concentric arcs with a central circle, enclosed in a symbol that doesn't belong to any system you know. Not Greek, not Persian, not Arabic. It looks like a door. You reach for a dry reed and begin copying it into your own notes. You aren't meant to annotate secret parts, but no one will know, and perhaps it means nothing. Still, as your pen traces the invisible ink into existence again, your mind feels suddenly too quiet, the room colder. Not from ghosts, not from magic, from realization. This symbol is mathematical, a form of rotation, a cycle of values mapped to cosmology. It's a rudimentary model, predicting not just seasons or solstices, but historical recurrence. A calendar for the soul, a theory that civilizations like stars return. The scribes are not philosophers, but they know things the philosophers never notice. You remember old scrolls from Babylon with similar spirals, Roman treatises misinterpreted as art, and Indian palm leaf texts that describe the yugas, cosmic ages repeating across millions of years. This scroll isn't just Persian theology. It's an algorithm for time. You sit very still. You don't know if anyone else will notice, but you can't stop thinking about it now. As you prepare your notes for storage, a soft knock comes from the archway. It's Nora. She enters without a word and sits beside you, offering a handful of almonds. You accept them gratefully. "I saw your lamp," she murmurs. You nod. After a pause, she asks, do you think we ever really understand what we copy? You don't answer right away. Finally, you say, sometimes I think we do, but too late. She nods as if that makes sense, then stands. Come sleep. The scroll will be here tomorrow. You don't tell her that you're not sure it will. The next morning, the scroll is gone. Master Harun greets you with a nod and informs you that the document has been returned to its sponsor. The work is complete, he says. You don't ask where it went. You simply hand him the finished copy. He doesn't ask where the diagram is. You return to your daily work. You finish an annotated chart of Aristotelian ethics. You help a junior scribe with a broken ink knife. You organize 4 Syriac scrolls for translation, file them by subject, and complete 3 clean pages of Euclidean geometry. It is as though nothing has changed, but something has. Inside your notes, buried in your drawer, are 2 secret pages. One, your copied version of the hidden diagram. The other, a letter to yourself. You write, if this symbol returns again, if it finds its way into other scrolls, other maps, other ages, then perhaps it is not we who read history, but history that reads us. You seal it. You file it deep. You go back to work. Reflection. In the end, no one will remember your name. Not the philosophers, not the patrons, not even the next generation of scribes. Your work is too quiet. Your existence too marginal, but centuries from now, someone may find a copy of that scroll. They may trace the same lines, wonder the same questions, and feel the same quiet awe, and they will never know that the reason they can read it is because you once did. The next morning, a rider arrives. Dust-streaked, sunburned, and half-mad with thirst, he brings word from Antioch. A rebellion has broken out somewhere near Edessa, too far to affect Dura directly, but close enough that the roads will be unsafe again. Roman forces have been redeployed. The eastern border, already thinly guarded, will be thinner still. And that means one thing. The Persians are watching. You receive the news without visible concern. It's your habit now. The fewer emotions you show, the less people expect from you. But inside, you are already rearranging your mental lists. Who will go without food? Which messages can no longer be sent? Which sermon scrolls must be hidden? You ask the writer to stay. He refuses. He has one more city to reach before sunset. You offer him water, bread, and your silent thanks, and then he rides on into the heat. By mid-morning, the basilica is warm and buzzing. You gather with a small group of children for catechism, teaching the story of Jonah. You choose Jonah not for its miraculous fish, but for its geography, its journey across hostile lands, its tension between duty and fear. One child, a sharp-eyed boy named Milius, interrupts. But if Jonah didn't want to go, why did God still make him? You pause. Because running doesn't change what's true, you say, only what you see. He nods, then begins drawing a fish on the dusty floor with his heel. You let him. In the afternoon, you visit the city's edge. Here, Dura's walls are cracked and uneven. The bricks show signs of wear, scrapes from old siege ladders, patches of melted pitch, sun-bleached stains. This part of the city was nearly lost decades ago during a minor skirmish with Parthian scouts, but it was rebuilt poorly, quickly, as everything here is. Now it holds mostly the poorest homes, thin huts leaning into the wall itself, small courtyards, where old women boil lentils over coals and children run barefoot through alleyways littered with fragments of forgotten gods. You walk these paths often, not because you're welcome, but because you must be seen. The bishop cannot live in the center of the city alone, not here on the borderlands. Your authority rests not on wealth, But on presence, a woman calls you over, asking for a blessing. Her son is ill, his skin pale, breath shallow. You kneel beside him, place a cool cloth on his forehead, whisper the psalm of healing. You know it won't cure him, but you also know this: to touch a dying child is to preach a better sermon than any scroll. Later that day, you meet with a visitor you did not expect, a Roman officer, Tribune Gaius Vitellius Secundus, newly arrived, young, olive-skinned, with a well-trimmed beard and the faint scent of leather oil. He wears his armor half-fastened, like he's still deciding whether Dura is worth the full dress code. He requests an audience in your study. You serve him watered wine, as is custom. He does not drink it. I'm told you speak Greek, Latin, and some Aramaic. He begins. You nod, and a little Persian, if they're patient. He leans in. I've been stationed in places like this before, where the gods bleed into each other, where no one knows who's praying to whom. A long pause. I need to know. He says, will your flock remain loyal to Rome? You answer, carefully. My flock prays for peace, for food, for dry homes and healthy children. If Rome gives them that, then yes, they are loyal. He doesn't like that answer, but he accepts it. Then he says something that catches your breath. There's word the Persians are digging tunnels beneath the city walls. He leaves before you can reply. Evening again. You walk alone through the empty church. You run your hand across the painted wall. Christ in robes, a lamb on his shoulders, a crowd beneath him with halos shaped like sunbursts. The paint is flaking, the stone beneath is crumbling. You count the small cracks like a worried surgeon. You do not believe the Persians are coming tomorrow, but you believe they will come, and when they do, the city may not hold. You sit down in your chair, pull out a blank scroll, dip your reed, and begin to write something that is not a sermon. A list, the names of your flock, the scrolls that must be preserved, the few who can flee fast, and those who must stay behind. You hear the church door open behind you. It's Lucia, the deacon. She speaks softly. They're afraid. You don't look up. So am I. She sits beside you. Should we run? You roll the reed between your fingers. No, not yet. A pause. Then what should we do? You smile faintly. Write things down, so someone remembers even if we don't survive. If no one survives to tell the story, does the story still matter? You awake in the dark. No bells, no cries, just the weight of something wrong. The air is still, thick with dust that wasn't there yesterday. You sit up and the silence clings to your skin like ash. Outside your window, the palm trees barely move. There is no wind, no morning bird calls, only the hush of something waiting. And then, beneath it all, you hear a faint thump, like something deep beneath the earth, like a footfall that never ends. You dress quickly. Wool robe, belt, sandals. You grab your satchel, the one with scrolls wrapped in waxed cloth, and you cross yourself without thinking. Outside, the sun is slow to rise. The sky glows orange, but the ground is dark, coated with powdery silt. You realize what it is. Silt kicked up by digging. The Persians are coming, not by the gate, not over the walls. Under. You run to the edge of the city. The Roman soldiers are already gathered, faces grim. The young tribune Vitellius is shouting commands. Oil is being heated, arrows notched, but everyone knows. This isn't a battle. This is a burial. The Persians have tunneled beneath Dura's walls. That dull thump you hear is the sound of supports collapsing, one by one. You remember the Jewish quarter, the synagogue near the southeastern wall. You remember the Roman garrison barracks just north of it, and you remember your own church. You run. The streets are already filling with people. some carrying baskets, others infants, most empty-handed. There is no plan, no evacuation route, just chaos wrapped in dust. You reach the church. It's still standing. Lucia is already inside, wrapping scrolls, tying bundles with torn linen. Take the baptistry scrolls, you say, and the gospel of Thomas. It might not be real, but it's worth keeping. She nods. No time for theology today. You pull up a floor tile. Beneath it is a clay jar. You place 3 scrolls inside, one of your own sermons, a list of names, and the fragment of a letter from a Christian in far-off Alexandria, wondering if Christ can live in the desert. You seal the jar and slide it back into the earth. If the walls fall, the earth will keep what we cannot. By midday, the eastern wall collapses, a dull roar, followed by a tremor through the stones. From the edge of the tower, you see a cloud of sand rise, slow, mushroom-shaped, curling toward the sky, like a hand. Then the sound comes, screams, metal, fire. The Persian army doesn't storm the city like a tide. It flows, silent, systematic. These are not raiders. These are engineers. They move like water, taking ground with calculation. Their faces are covered. Their swords are curved. Their god is fire. Within hours, half the city is in flames. You remain in the church. You do not flee. You do not hide. You and Lucia open the doors, pull water from the well, and carry the wounded inside. Some are Christian. Some are not. A Mithraic initiate lies bleeding beside a Jewish merchant. Neither speaks. Both hold hands. You tear strips from the altar cloth to wrap their wounds. Later that night, you write your final sermon. You write it with trembling fingers in Latin and Greek. It is not addressed to the people of Dura. It is addressed to whoever may find it, to the sand perhaps, to a God who listens through walls. You write, we were here, we worshipped, we broke bread and bled beside each other. The gods of Rome and Persia looked away, but we stayed. This church was small, its roof leaked, its benches cracked, but we loved it. If you find this, remember that faith was here. Quiet, dusty, undramatic, but real. In the final hours, the church burns. You are pulled from the fire by a soldier, one of Vitellius's men. He does not ask permission. He throws you over his shoulder and carries you to the surviving quarter of the city. You wake the next day beneath a collapsed awning. Your hands are blistered. Your voice is gone. Lucia is beside you. Her eyes are open, but she does not blink. You close them gently. In the end, the city is lost. The Persians will occupy it for a time, then abandon it. The desert will take it back. The Euphrates will change course. The mud brick homes will collapse. The scrolls will mold. The names will fade. You will die before Rome ever hears what happened. And yet, centuries later, a team of archaeologists will arrive. They will uncover the painted walls of your church, the baptistry fresco, the Hebrew scriptures preserved beside the Christian ones. They will dig up coins, sandals, fragments of letters. They will find the clay jar, and they will read your name, Marcellus, Bishop, Borderlands. Final reflection. History is not kept by those who win. It is kept by those who wrote things down even as the walls fell.